How you guys doing tonight?
Can you start off and can you just give us some background about where and how you found your passion for music?
I've always been a fan of music and just trying to find how I can express myself through music. And I started producing records, but didn't realize that that's what I was doing until I went to the Art Institute of Atlanta, and then I found out that that's exactly what the title was. Because I was always, I could hear the song in my head, and I just didn't know how to get it out. So I could hear how the song would start, what the instruments were, how the vocals were supposed to go, and I just realized that producing is all about getting the team together and organizing the team and help them bring your vision to life. So that's where I first started learning how to produce records at the Art Institute of Atlanta when I went to music school.
Okay. When did you know you wanted to work in music, that it wasn't just a hobby?
I came back to Greensboro. I started a record label, and we started producing hip-hop records here locally, and then it became more of a business. So you start finding out the ins and outs of how the music business works. You get burnt sometimes, but you get back up and you just go this direction and that direction, and I really figured it out. And we started putting out hip-hop records here in Greensboro, and doing concerts here in Greensboro and things like that. So that's when I realized I could actually make a career out of this.
So you've described it a little bit already with the Art Institute, but how did you get started? How do you get connected? What is that?
Oh man, it's really just constantly networking, constantly meeting people, finding people that can help you along the way. For me, Greensboro Day School was a big part of me really just understanding music in general. Because here I learned about pop music, and I learned about classic rock music, and all these different genres of music here that I was able to put into hip hop that a lot of people weren't sampling before. So they're a big part of my foundation and just work ethic. One thing about Greensboro Day School that I realized is that all the students that I went to school here with, they were always focused on career at an early age. Their parents would take them to their workplace in the summertime, and you would work at the dentist's office or the lawyer's office, helping your parents out. They would go to the alumni games for Duke and Carolina, and just really just being exposed to that at an early age. And just seeing that, it just had me focus on career at a very early time in my life. And that's how I really just started pursuing music very early.
So it sounds like this place had an impact on you.
Oh, definitely. I actually had a third grade teacher by the name of Miss Dunker that she taught me. I had a spelling test that I didn't prepare for. And
that's never happened to you guys.
she called me out on the test, and she really gave it to me and just told me, like, you have to really prepare for these things. And at that point, I just adopted this whole thing about being prepared, always being prepared. And it's that lesson that I learned from her that I was able to apply to my life, because now I was making music all the time, just constantly over-preparing, making sure that I always had music to present to somebody. And that's how I ended up working with Benson Herbert, that's how I ended up working with P. Diddy. It was just like, they were so blown away that I always had a huge catalog of music that, and they figured, well, if he has this much music, there's bound to be some hit records in here. And so that's how, that's what I've always done, is just make sure that I'm always prepared.
So Greensboro is home, it sounds like. Why do you think this area is important, and do you have a vision for Greensboro and the music industry?
I think there's a lot of talent here. Just living in New York and LA, I run into so many people that are from this region that are doing music. And so I wanted to come back here and help musicians, producers, songwriters, help them with the business aspect of it, because we lose so many artists that get turned off by the business, the music business, because it's so, there's some shade to it, and it's very difficult to navigate through. So a lot of people get broken from it, and they lose their passion for music. For me, it's always been about the passion of music for me. So when you find that, that will take you through those low periods when your business is not right or things are not going well in your career, you just keep that passion for music. So I want to move back out here and help a lot of these artists find their way, help them with the business so that they don't have to go through these same, pitfalls that I had to navigate through. So we want to develop artists out here, producers, songwriters, give them an opportunity. We have a wide network of people that can that we can reach out to, that we can help them, get record deals and pursue their dreams.
That's great. And it was funny, I was talking to your mom a little bit about this, and we had a speaker earlier in the week that was talking about following your passion and you will find success.
Oh, definitely, definitely. That's what it's all about. And if you stay focused on that, you'll never get deterred by how much you have to go through. Because if you really think about it, it's just like a small moment in time that you have to endure. This whole thing is about endurance and just getting to the next place, So it's just a small moment in time that you get tested and you have to go through certain things, and then you move on to the next phase. I've been through so many different directions in my life doing music, but I never thought that I couldn't make it. And so when you just focus on the passion, you'll get through it eventually, and you look back and think, like, wow, how did I even do that? And you'll find yourself where you want to be.
So you spoke a little bit about, the way I heard it was being a producer is almost like being the conductor of the symphony.
Definitely.
Can you speak a little bit more about it? Because I think we hear about production in technical production and production of movies where it's funding. How are you engaged with being a producer, a record producer, a music producer, lead producer? Are you working with a team?
Well, I got turned on to that because I look at, you guys know Michael Jackson's album Thriller. Quincy Jones was the producer on that, but he didn't play one instrument on the entire record. And when you look at it, he has a dream team of musicians and songwriters and arrangers that he's working with, and he basically organized the whole thing and brought the best out of everybody. So that's really what a producer is just really just bringing the best out of these musicians and songwriters and artists. And there's some psychology to it. You have to know how to push certain buttons to bring the best out of people. And that's what I found out as a producer is the best part for me, because it's like having all these people and you bring them together to create this vision and that you have for the song. And the next thing you know, the song comes out and it's touching the world and it has an effect on so many different people. So that's what really producing is all about, is just bringing the team together. You may play on some of the stuff, but for the most part, it's just really bringing all these talented people together and creating this piece of music that will affect everybody,
What are the most challenging parts of that job?
You have to deal with egos. You have to deal with, one thing you have to do is be very sure of yourself and your vision, and you can't let that be altered. You have to be open to constructive criticism. There's a lot of trial and error. But if you're very sure of what you start getting to that place where you're very confident because you have a formula. Mm-hmm. When you look at Motown, there's a formula that they used with writing records and making records. And so once you start getting into that zone, you figure out what your formula is, you can do it over and over again. Because to me, life is about repetition. It's about doing it over and over again until it becomes involuntary, where you're just great at it because you do it so much. And we've done it a million times in our life, but sometimes we get deterred by the learning curve, or we feel like, there was a thing that I live in California, and there was this huge mountain in the canyon. There's a place called Runyon Canyon where everybody works out at, and it's this huge canyon, and at the top, everybody gets to the top, right? So for me, I would go out there every day, and I would try to make it to the top, and I would get halfway there, and I would just stop, because I would be looking at how far I had to go. And then one day, I just put my head down, and I just kept going, and the next thing I know, I look up, and I'm at the top of the mountain. So that's, to me, became like a metaphor for life. Just keep going, never stop, never see how far you have to go. Just keep going, and eventually you get to your destination.
It's like the work ethic you
said. Yes, definitely. And work ethic is so important. We would drive 100 miles to get to the studio. We would sleep in cars. We would do whatever we had to do to make it in the music business. And you have to really do that in order to be successful in this business. You have to be willing to really endure everything that happens in this music business, because you'll run into managers, producers, everybody wants something from you. You have to be able to understand the relationships that are sincere, or somebody has an agenda. So it's a lot of chess that you have to play and just navigate through this thing. So it can be difficult.
What do you consider your greatest success in the business?
Probably, well, one, just enduring it and being able to sit here and talk about it. But for one, just producing Michael Jackson was like a big thing for me. I always used to listen to his records as a kid, and coming from Greensboro, I never thought in a million years I'd be standing in front of him having a conversation about music. So being able to do that was just like, it just blew me away. He was talking to us about the song or whatever, and I'm standing in the face, and like, I literally just bust out into this huge smile as I'm talking to him. And I know he's looking at me like, why is this guy like smiling like this or whatever? But it just hit me at that moment that like, Michael Jackson is literally like 2 feet in front of you having a conversation. So at that moment, I just felt like, if you dream big, anything can happen. You just have to believe it, you know. I always use the term 6 degrees of separation. And it's like, anybody that you want to get to in this world, you can get to, especially now with the internet. But you guys know somebody that knows somebody that will put you where you need to be. So I've always been a big fan of that. And that's how I met Michael Jackson. That's how I met Beyonce, just 6 degrees of separation.
So I'm sure students want to hear a little bit about some of the people you work with, maybe some experiences or stories that I also, I guess that's the educator hat on me, want to hear about how to adapt to a wide range of people and how do you cultivate greatness out of anyone, not just the greats?
Well, for me, I'm always about taking somebody a place that they've never been before musically. I think when you get in that space of being uncomfortable, that's when, you know, the good stuff really comes out. Because we're so used to doing what we know, but when you get into that space of doing something that like you've never done before, then you start finding out what you're really about, you know. So working with Beyonce, just taking her into a space that she's never been musically. And this was like her debut album, so this was like a big deal for her. And so musically, I tried to take her somewhere that she had never been before, lyrically talking about something that she had never done before. And to this day, it's like one of her favorite songs. She still performs it in concert. When I did the record, she told me when she was at the Grammys that Prince actually loved the song and learned the song in rehearsals and played it for her. So I'm a huge fan of Prince. So for him to, you know, something that I made in my bedroom, all of a sudden, he loves this record, and it's amazing to him that he learned it. Like, it was just like a big deal to me. Like, that somebody of that I admire like that really liked what I was doing, and it had an effect on me. So.
Are you willing to share any stories about working with Beyonce or Michael Jackson? I think there's a lot of Beyonce interest out there.
She was really cool, really down to earth. We talked for like hours before we even started working on music. And that's what I love about working with people, is that you got to get to know them, you got to get to know what they like, what they're into, and find out if there's organically something that you guys have that you guys can connect on, something that you have in common. A lot of times I get approached by people to work in the studio or work on music together, but I'm always like, let's hang out. Let's see what you like. Let's see what type of music you're into. Let's see if we have something in common, and then start there with the creative process. So working with her was really cool, and just the conversation. She talked about so many different things in her life that were going on at that time. So I got really close to her and just having those conversations as she's stepping out of Destiny's Child, making this solo record. And, you know, we all look at her like she's very talented, but there was still a lot of pressure on her to succeed. So just seeing her go through that process and helping her with that was like, you know, a great feeling to be a part of that, you know. And then when the Grammy happened, there's a lot of producers on that record, a lot of big producers on that record. So you're sitting in front of the TV, and then she calls your name out while she's on the podium. So, you know, it just kind of like it was like a very surreal moment. Like, the record that I did for her had that type of effect on her, that she mentioned my name when she did her Grammy speech.
Were you at the Grammys then?
Nah, I wasn't at the Grammys then. I wasn't there that year, but I should have been there. I didn't really realize how big a deal it was when it was happening. And most of these things, when you're working with these artists, you don't really realize it in the moment how big it is until afterwards. And in this business, you're always, you know, moving on to the next challenge, and you're moving into the next phase. So you very rarely have time to sit back and look at things in retrospect of what you've accomplished and who you've worked with and whatnot. So, you know, I just keep moving forward.
Who are some names of people we should keep our eyes on in Greensboro?
I'm just getting out here. I'm just starting to hear some of these new artists and musicians out here and collaborate. I'm sure there's some talented artists and producers out here in the audience that I would love to work with and get to know as well. So I know you guys make music, and I know you guys are talented. So I'd love to meet, you know, who is the next superstar out here? Who's the next John Mayer? You know, who's the next Justin Bieber? Whoever. You know, I'd love to work with all of them.
All right. Before we open the floor to questions, can you tell the students one or two things that you hope they'll remember as they leave here?
Just really dream really big, and just you know, match that with your work ethic. Just make sure you constantly are working on your craft every single day. It's impossible to do music every single day and not get good. Even if you're like not good and you don't have a lot of talent, if you do it every single day, you will get better and better. You will find your space, especially as an artist. Just buying equipment, working on it at home, you know, letting your inhibitions go and just trying things and experimenting, you'll find your space and you'll find yourself as a musician or an artist. But you just have to just keep working at it every single day. You just have to just constantly make music. And then when you do that, eventually you'll look up and you'll look at a record that you made 6 months ago, and you'll look at what you're doing now, and it'll be like night and day. So just constantly work on your music and constantly dream really big, and it can happen.
Well, I think we have some microphones out there, so if anyone has a question, raise your hands, and we will bring a microphone to you. I see one.
Hey there. I just wanted to ask about your role models when you were first getting started, and maybe now today who you looked at and were influenced by.
Of course, originally I was a big fan of Prince because he writes and produces everything, plays the main instruments, and he's just worked on music since he was 16. That's all he did. His biggest challenge was to get up and write a song every day. So I would love to just have that problem where you don't even have to deal with life. It's just about making music. But also Pharrell, Timberland, all these different producers that started off doing hip hop, but were eventually able to move into other genres of music. And that's, you know, music is all the same, because if you look at every iconic artist that you know, they do a fusion of something. It's not just one genre of music. They're always fusing something. So that's one thing I would tell you guys also too, is just like study all genres of music and do a fusion with your music. Because when you do a natural fusion, all of a sudden, you're creating something that nobody else can create. And if you're playing instruments, I know we all program on the computer, Pro Tools, and on keyboards and whatnot, but learn an instrument, because when you learn an instrument, you're going to play it totally different than somebody else plays it. So that's when you start developing your signature sound, and you have something that people go to you for that specific thing. So I would say learn an instrument, and you know, just constantly work at it and master your instrument. But Prince was probably like my biggest influence more than anybody, because he was able to do everything.
As we get another question, I know it sounds like that philosophy of just kind of doing you is, I saw a clip of you at Fashion Week, and you're trying to, you know, you have your own sense of style. Is that just something you pulled together?
That's just being in New York City and being influenced by the fashion and the culture in New York City. Trust me, I dressed like this when I was in Greensboro. But we want to bring that to Greensboro. We want to bring fashion, because eventually you'll find yourself that you live for just creative expression. So that may be through fashion, maybe through music, maybe through art. So, you know, express yourself. Your music and your fashion are synonymous. So when you feel a certain way, you make a certain type of music, you know, that type of thing.
So how did you yourself like get heard and like out there?
So I eventually got on because I made a record, and it on the radio, and a guy by the name of Vincent Herbert was driving through Charlotte, North Carolina, and heard the song on the radio. And when he heard the song on the radio, he called the radio station, and they found out who it was. And they basically gave him my number, and he called me. And we went to the studio, and of course, he was rich, so of course he buys out the studio time. Somebody was in there, he kicked him out, paid him, bought the studio time. So for the next 3 hours, I was just playing him music, just playing him track after track after track after track, which goes back to what I had been doing before that. I used to work third shift at a hotel, Super 8 hotel. I worked third shift, and when I would get out of work, I would make music until it was time to go to work again. And so all I would do is just make music all day. So when I was in the studio with Vincent, he was just impressed with how much music I had. So he signed me to his production deal. I had a rap artist at the time. He signed him as well. And next thing you know, I'm in like this five-star hotel in New York City overlooking the Hudson. And we're meeting Sylvia Rome at Electra Records. And we got signed. And so it's just about just constantly making music and putting it out. Because you never know who's out there and who's listening. And it was just, he just happened to be coming through Charlotte at that time, and he heard my music, and that's how we got on.
Hey there, you working in the music industry and stuff?
Yes.
Is there Illuminati, bro?
Is there anybody what?
The Illuminati.
Oh.
In the music business.
Is that conspiracy theory? I'm not sure about the Illuminati. Because I hear that all the time, but I'm like, is it really Illuminati? Because I've met some of these people, like the I don't know. I know there's some shady people in this business, but I haven't run across anybody that's affiliated with the Illuminati. But hey, man, if you have some insight on it, please share with me. Let me know, because I would definitely like to know who I'm in the room with. But I've met Jay-Z and Puffy and all these different people. I never got that vibe from them. So. I don't know.
What was it like to hear Beyonce sing what you created or helped create?
Wow. It just blew me away, because when I gave them the music, it was just a track. But I had a certain vision for what should be written on it and what it should sound like. And then when they came back to me, it was exactly what I envisioned, which shows me the power of music. Like when you create something, then if it has a certain feel to it, it's going to resonate with certain people, and they're going to write that song that it feels like. So it just blew me away when they wrote to it, and I was just like in awe. Like I couldn't believe it was coming through the speakers that she had written this. And then I started singing in concert here at the Greensboro Coliseum one night, and she really performs it, like she takes it to a whole nother level and whatnot. So it was crazy. And just to go on YouTube and see the comments and the people and how many plays, I think it's got something like 8 million plays or something like that or whatever. And just to see the comments and how that record, I see a lot of people that want to be singers, they cover that record on YouTube, so it just blows me away. Something that you created that touches so many people, which shows you the power of music. You can touch anybody. Music cuts through all racial barriers. It brings people together. It brings people in the room, and that's what I love about the power of music. Like you can change lives.
I have to ask you, what do you think about all the cuts that are happening in arts education in our public schools?
It's terrible because, before the only way that you can really learn music is in school and in the church. And so now we're in this space where they cut the music programs back, so people are not really discovering music in school anymore. And we're kind of in this spiritual space where a lot of people aren't going to church like they used to. Like, my mom used to make me go to church, so that's how I got acclimated to it. But, we're not in that space anymore, so we miss out on a lot of talented people that, could adapt to learning music. So I think we need to bring it back. I love the fact that you guys play instruments here. I was here the other day and I saw so many young kids playing instruments. And it starts there. If you learn it there, you'll continue on and you'll find your love for it. So I love the fact that you guys still implement that in the education aspects of Greensboro High School. So,
Someone back there.
How much fluidity is there in a studio between like a musician, producer, and a sound technician?
Well, the producer has the vision, but you still want to give the musician his space and let him create. I always, like I don't play guitar, but I study so many different guitars, from Santana to Jeff Beck to John Mayer, all these different guitarists, and I know what their sound is. So I try to find musicians that are well versed. So if I feel like this solo on this record needs to have a Santana feel to it, I can call it out and he can play it back and he can interpret it like that. So just really being able to establish that chemistry between the musician and yourself is an art that you really have to fine tune and figure out how to do that, because you can bring the best out of a musician if you can speak their language. So I just try to give them their space and just leave them a little bit and let them do what they do. The engineer is always the worst because they're just pushing buttons, so you gotta kind of stay on them because everything is happening so fast in the studio. You want the engineer to be able to keep up and get it recorded and whatnot. Because the worst thing that can happen is, I hate working with people that have these great ideas and they'll sing them in front of you or play them in front of you, and then when you ask them to play them back, they can't remember. So you miss a lot of great music with that. So you always want an engineer that's always recording and always capturing everything that you're doing.
Were there any times when you hit rock bottom and you just thought about giving up or quitting, per se?
I never thought about quitting. I definitely hit rock bottom a bunch of times in my career. But the thing about it, like I was saying before, when you find your passion for music and you just focus on that, that'll take you through those moments. Because the beautiful thing about the music business, every single day that you wake up, you're one text or one page, one text or one email or one phone call away from your life just changing. Like right before, like the starving artist actually really exists. Doesn't exist so much now because people don't necessarily sacrifice like that to make it in the music business. But you hear stories of like Guns N' Roses where it's like 8 of them sleeping in a 1-bedroom apartment, eating ramen noodles and practicing every day until they finally made it. So I've experienced those type of situations where I've been, sleeping in the car or whatever, any of these things. My mom doesn't know about any of this, by the way. So, but also, it's just having that drive that, of course, you can always pick up and go back home, but for me, it was just like, I'm so close, I can't stop. So every day in the music business, you have the opportunity to get that email that will change your life. And that's how I got the Beyonce call. With Michael Jackson, I submitted that song to Janet Jackson at first. And the A&R was like, nobody's gonna do a song about death. Janet won't record this record. And so we cut this record on Babyface's brother. And as we're doing the record, he's like, this guy's trying to make me sound like Michael Jackson. You guys should just go get Michael Jackson because I'm not him. And then the light bulb went out. And I was like, yeah, he's right. So I was like, who do I know that knows Michael Jackson? So I start doing 6 Degrees of Separation. And it turns out a good friend of mine was Teddy Riley's assistant. And Teddy Riley just happened to be working on Michael Jackson. So I sent him the song. I don't hear anything for about 3 weeks. I get that text the next morning, and they're like, come to Miami, Michael loves the record, he wants to record it. That next thing I know, Michael Jackson is standing in my face. So it can happen, and that's the thing I love about this business. Every day, something else is happening. You don't really go through long periods where nothing is going on. It's always something, and there's so many opportunities. It's just figuring out what are the best opportunities to take your career to the next level. I've had situations where I've signed a publishing deal and you're getting like $75,000 on a Friday afternoon and you think it's the greatest thing in the world, and then you realize, wait a minute, the song commitment is huge, I'll never get out of this. And after you spent the money, you're stuck in the deal. So those are the dark periods that I went through. It's just like signing contracts and not being aware of, like not having the guidance or being aware of what I'm signing. Attorneys that are, not having your best interests at heart. So you got to really align yourself with a great team of people that you trust, management, attorneys, people that believe in you and that will protect you. So all you have to do is just make music and you have a great team around you. So yes, I've experienced dark periods, but I never thought that I couldn't make it. So they only last, like I said, a small amount of time. You just have to get through it.
Hi. Yeah, I'm right here. I'm a singer, Joe.
Okay.
If you could produce one artist, who would it be?
Ooh, let me see. Like Frank Ocean. I like Pharrell. Let's see. Tori Kelly is really dope. I would love to produce a record on her. She's an incredible singer. Just any of the Gwen Stefani is somebody that I'm interested in producing. So there are a lot of different artists out there. I just feel like I could produce anybody. I could produce in any genre. I just feel music, so I could bring any of those artists into my space and create something for them. So I like working with them.
So you've worked with B.I.G and like 2000 and like 90s rappers.
Yeah.
So like now that there's new upcoming rappers like Lil Pump, what do you think about that? Like, because you hear a lot that it's like rap is not the same anymore. Like this is just trash.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely changed. You know, I don't think that the people that started hip hop intended it to be in this space. So now it's more about materialism and financial gain. Like when we were making records, we never thought like we could make $1 million from this record. We just wanted to have our record play on the radio and be able to do shows and be able to just express ourselves. Now artists are going in the studio with an agenda to make $1 million off of this particular record. But I do understand what it is, I understand what they're doing, and I embrace it because it still moves the hip hop culture forward. It's their way of expressing themselves. And so, if that's their form of expression, you can't deny it, So I listen to all of that. Like every Tuesday night, I'm on Spotify and I'm listening to all the new records that are coming out and everything that they're doing. And the best thing about it is if you can mix some of that with what you know of like classic hip hop, then you create something that's totally different that stands out. So but for me, I look for lyricists, people that are very visual in their storytelling when it comes to hip hop. On the production side, I like to mix different things together. I think Kanye West is great at doing all different types of music and can rap over anything. And yeah, he's a little abrasive, he's a little over the top. But like musically, he's the only one that I've seen, he can rap over any type of music. The Yeezus album doesn't sound like, Beautiful Twisted Dark Fantasy. They're like totally different or not. So, I like the new generation of rappers, and I think they have something to offer. So, I'm into it. They'll never be Biggie, but definitely check it.
Okay, so you seem like you have a pretty good ear for music. I'm right here. Excuse me. So, like I said before, you seem like you have a pretty good ear for music. So when you're out looking for artists, what do you look for?
I look for star power. I look for somebody that can change the room. Because that's the thing that I have a problem with The Voice and American Idol and whatnot, because none of those artists would ever really get signed if it wasn't for those TV shows. Because when you look at them, right, we all see those artists, and the show's been on for like 15 years, and you really only have Carrie Underwood, Fantasia, and maybe one other one, Chris Daughtry or somebody. Kelly Clarkson, right. So it's only like 4 of them in like 15 years out of all those singers that have really come out to do anything. So my thing is, the first thing I look for is like image. Do they come in and do they change the room? Do they capture your attention as soon as you see them? Then I listen to what they're doing musically. Like if they're a singer, is there something unique about their voice that is different, and the way they sing and things like that? So it starts for me with image, and then from there I go into like, what do they have to offer you in their artistry? Are they doing something different? And one thing I try to express to a lot of artists around here is like, you're competing against the world. When I ask them, well, who do you see yourself, who's your competition when you come out? And they can't think of it, and I'm like, no, Rihanna's your competition, Beyonce's your competition. I want to work with artists that believe that they can be as big as those artists, because those artists at one time were just like you guys trying to figure out what they want to do as far as doing music. And you have to believe that you can be that big in order to do that, you know. So I look for artists that dream big, believe that they can be that big and have something to offer and something unique and different. And the most important thing is studying. Studying great artists from the past. Because if you look at all the icons like Beyonce, like Lady Gaga, they all study great artists that came before them. And they take bits and pieces of that and then they create their own thing. So if you study, and it's all on the internet. You can find all these great artists on the internet. You can look at documentaries on them. You can find stuff out about them. And when you can fuse bits and pieces of what they do into what you do, then you're in a whole different space than everybody else, and that's when you blow up.
Did you, like Michael Jackson, did you guys have a lot in common when you guys worked together?
Well, one thing I found out about Michael Jackson was that, like, he's a perfectionist. Like, when we went in the studio, he studied, he went with his vocal coach, and they worked out for like 2 hours just warming up his vocals. And I'm like, who does that? Like, nobody does that anymore. But he's in there working on his vocals. He worked on his vocals with his vocal coach for like 2 hours, and then came and sang like 30 minutes, and then broke out. And I was like, where'd he go? And he was like, I'll be back tomorrow. So his whole thing is he's very perfectionist about his vocals and how he lays them down. A friend of mine that was working on the record section of Michael Jackson Fanatic is like crazy. So after Michael Jackson leaves, he goes in the booth and he comes back and he has some artwork that Michael Jackson had done by it. Because what Michael Jackson does, he's such a Michael Jackson fan, he realized that Michael has a habit of doing artwork in between the takes. And so he remembered that, and when he went in the booth, he found a cartoon character that Michael had drawn. And it just like, it's probably worth millions and millions of dollars now that he has it. And it just blew me away that he knew to go do that. So, but he studied Michael Jackson and he knew that. He also got a glass with his lip prints on it. That was really weird. But he was definitely a Michael Jackson fanatic, and he still owns that piece of artwork to this day.
You with all of these big names.
I'm from here.
I was gonna say, and you come back here to talk to us.
I'm from here. That's one thing I love about Greensboro Day School. All of this stuff was a part of my foundation. The teachers were like parents to me, you know. All the kids were like brothers and sisters because we all hung out on the weekend. We would go spend the weekend with different classmates. So, and when you're in the same class with somebody from the first grade on up, you know everything about them, so you start becoming friends, and they're like your family. So just being from here, and that's something that I had to really figure out, because moving to New York City, you know, they prey on, you know, the city slicker mentality of being in New York City. They prey on that. So it's like, when I first went there, I met with this guy that was a big time producer, and he wanted to sign me and everything, and it was like, we started having a conversation, and he started talking about God. Like 10 seconds into the conversation, I come back and tell my mom, I'm like, Mom, he's down with God. He started talking about God. He's like, he's a great guy. I want to work with this guy. And then I found out he turned out to be like one of the biggest crooks in the business. So the thing about it is that one thing I love about coming from the South and coming from Greensboro Day and just being out here is that you have a certain way that you were brought up and the way you were taught things, that morals and scruples are a big part of what you do. And in this business, that really exists. So you can see it from far away and you know what it is. So once you get into it. So I love the people here. That's why I wanted to move back here, because I love the people here. And I was in Hollywood, and I'm like, I don't really have any real friends here. I have people that I work with, people that, you know, I do business with, but I don't really have any real genuine friendships. And I know that you can find that here, because as soon as you come to Greensboro, you feel the love, you feel the sincerity of the people. So that's what I love.
We really appreciate you being back. I think we're out of time for formal questions, but if we could give Fanatic a big round of applause.
Yes, we're gonna do some music together, you guys. We're gonna make some music. That is in the works. We're going to definitely do something together. I'd love to work with you.